Welcome back, everyone, to the Crash the Pond podcast. It is a Monday, October 20th edition of the pod. Lots to get into, lots of Ducks hockey, but I am overjoyed to welcome back to the show Patrick, who made such a great appearance last week that we said, you know what, let's get this guy back on. So, welcome back, Patrick.
Thanks. I'm always happy to fill in for Jake as he adjusts into life as a dad of two.
Yeah, as a dual father. Is that the term? I don't know.
I
A
don't
double
know.
father. It's definitely not the right term, but it's fine. It's okay to make fun of him in his absence. But yeah,
Sure.
lots to get into here, and the benefit of Jake not being here is that we're not going to spend 3 minutes just talking about something random or talking about like a Sunday, the first day of the week. We're going to stay on task today, which is nice.
Yeah, I don't know how to about anything else other than hockey, so it's right in my wheelhouse.
That Jake guy, sometimes I'd like it if he was a bit more on task. I will say, for those who, oh, my audio's coming across poorly. Uh-oh. This is why it's good to have the chat. Let's see. Ah. Okay, how's that?
Better.
Okay. Shout out to Alex in the chat for pointing that out, because that is something that happens sometimes. I have my webcam audio, so thank goodness you pointed that out. It should be better now. People are saying better in the chat. Great. We're off to a splendid start. That's just been my day. To peel back the curtain, Patrick got his first taste of true Crash the Pond lore here, where at 7:49, I still had not yet joined the stream, and I was chowing down my dinner as fast as I could. That's what happens every week with Jake and I. So,
Yeah, I was
welcome.
checking my link, make sure it wasn't me.
You're officially officially a Crash the Ponder when you've experienced that. So, but yes, thank you to the chat for pointing that out, because that was I would not have noticed myself. So anyway, let's dive right into it though. The Ducks play 3 games last week, or over the course of the last week, and as we kind of did last week here, I on the last show, I'm going to start with this before we get into the nitty gritty of each game, because I think that for us, following each game, really getting into the kind of the X's and O's and the stats and all of that, you really dial in on players, plays, coaching decisions, what have you. But kind of zooming out, taking a step back here, what do you feel like we've learned, if anything, about this team in the last week?
It's hard to make like huge takeaways right now at this point of the season. I know we have more of a sample size. We have 5 games to work with instead of 2 like last week. But it's hard to kind of pinpoint what's been going right or wrong still, because they're kind of all over the place. Like all the mistakes that have been made they haven't been very consistent. Like they'll kind of clean up one area and then there's an area of weakness in the next game and little things like that. So it's tough to kind of pinpoint what's been going right or wrong. What do you think watching like all these last 3 games? Like they're very different results, different. I don't know, the way they kind of unfold is they've kind of been hit and miss.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a completely valid answer. We were just talking about it before we started recording, that it does kind of feel like that, where we don't necessarily feel like we're learning a ton. But that might just be the takeaway, is that, watching these games, I think that this is a team that's figuring itself out. I don't think they necessarily have an identity. I don't necessarily think that they have their kind of roles and things like that really squared away. And you kind of see it in some of these issues that have cropped up, and some of the good things that have cropped up, where you'll have games where they really have these shining moments of offense, of brilliance, or of different shifts where they're dominating the game. And then you have other periods where they really have these lapses in judgment. They have these poor mistakes. And that kind of feels like what they are right now. They're a team in transition. They're a team that's figuring itself out. There's also quite frankly, there's a lot of young players on this team who themselves are figuring themselves out. Like Leo Carlsson is a guy who comes to mind. Jackson Lacombe, he at times is kind of an adventurer on the ice. Mm-hmm. So you put all that together, and I think that's kind of where we're at. Agree or disagree?
Totally agree. I think they're still learning the intricacies of the system. They're 5 games in and a handful of preseason games, and they're learning each other still. Is still a lot of new faces. You can really tell when they go up against a well-oiled machine like the Carolina Hurricanes, and even veterans like on the Pittsburgh Penguins, where there's just little things where they are not quite sure yet where that second pressure is coming from when they're trying to break the puck out. They're not quite sure, exactly how Chris Kreider is going to crash the net, if he's just trying to take away the defenseman or if he's trying to get open. That's just like little stuff like that where I feel like the disconnect is still present. And the hope is obviously that, that kind of filters itself out as we go along here. So I think that's exactly it, though. It's all a learning curve, but at the same time, these games count. Every game is 2 points. Every day, that goes by is a day closer to the end of the 82. So they are meaningful games, and these mistakes matter now. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in that sense.
Yeah, and I think that's really it right there. Is that on one hand, we can sit here and say, oh, this is a team that's learning. This is a young team, blah, blah, blah. But this is a team that wants to make the playoffs. You have the owner of the team saying, like, it's time to win. You have a GM saying as such. You have a coach that was brought in to do that. So I guess for you, just in your own personal kind of evaluation or viewpoint of the team, how do you approach that where balancing the fact that this is a team that says it wants to win, but when you watch it play, it looks maybe more like a team that's still developing?
I think it's tough because the goals are lofty, and the team's never going to, I don't know, the team with this many veterans and, like you said, a coach who's 67 years old and a GM who maybe be in the last 1 or 2 years of his deal. It's like they're saying the right things, and I'll say that even the vibes after the Carolina loss, they were just different. If that loss had happened in the last 2 years, it would have felt devastating. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't for whatever reason. I know it's still early and you don't want to get too down or ride the highs and lows of a game when it's game 4 of 82. But I'll say that they are all aware of that there are mistakes, and that Joe Quenneville himself even said, I asked him if it was almost encouraging that they were little mental mistakes that they were making in the last 2 home games, and he was like, I don't know if they're mistakes and they're just learning where learning the team. So it's kind of exactly what we're talking about. So he's defending his players, but yeah. So I mean,
it's a challenge.
They're still
yeah. No, I would agree, and also it's interesting because you mentioned the kind of the vibe after the Carolina loss, and you are right that I feel like in past years it would have felt like, ugh, this team is bad again or whatever, and now maybe it's just the demeanor of the players when they speak or the coach when he speaks, but nothing really feels like a big deal, good or bad. And maybe that's a testament to Joel Quenneville's experience, but it just kind of feels like, hey, we're 5 games in, this team, we're figuring each other out, and let's just see where it goes. Whereas with Cronin, and yes, we are going to be talking about Greg Cronin for a while, I feel like, but
yeah, I mean,
this is what we do when there's a new coach, is you compare, and I feel like with Cronin, everything felt like life or death, kind of. I mean, you were in the trenches in those press conferences, so maybe you can speak to that a little better.
I mean, yeah, you could feel it's just an energy. You could feel how, after a win, he was praising his players, and as he should. But after a loss, it was pretty crushing. We were almost timid to ask the questions that we needed to ask. So it was, and even in the locker room too, it just, the players would kind of sulk over a little bit. So yeah, it's definitely different, but also it is still young in the season. So maybe once the games kind of ramp up as far as how meaningful they are, then those reactions will change once, when they lose a big game or win a big game.
Yeah, I do get that feeling that, Quenneville, having done this as long as he has, it does feel as if he knows the time and place, and he kind of knows, all coaches talk about, you want to save your bullets, meaning there's a time where you do have to lay into your team, whether it's publicly or privately. But you can't do that all the time, because if you do that all the time, then the players are going to tune you out. And I think we can all probably assume that that's a bit of what happened under Cronin. There's decent evidence to support that, lots of testimonials. Whereas with Quenneville, yeah, if you just start hammering players in Game 5 over a turnover, what's more likely to then lead to the player correcting the mistake later on? And I do feel like it's a very interesting just strategy, even as a teacher, is like, hey, if I want this guy to actually get better, is it more important to really berate him over his mistake or acknowledge the mistake, but kind of leave him that freedom to then correct later on? And I think an example of that, not to get too deep into it, but I think Pavel Mintyukov's been an example of that, where I think he was a little shaky in preseason and to start the season, and it does feel like the last couple of games he's really come on and he's playing very freely. And it does feel like he's not afraid to make mistakes. And I don't know if you've seen it that way, though, with him.
With him, oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, all last season, I've said time and time again that, it almost felt like, they say gripping the stick too tight, but he was kind of afraid to make a mistake, so he turned into a glass chipper. And now you can see he started the season kind of feeling that way a little bit, where very hesitant to make a mistake. No one wants to make a mistake, but the kind of trusting of your instincts and reading what's in front of you and kind of leaning into what got you here. I feel like I'm kind of seeing a little bit more of that from him, especially.
Yeah, my my metric for Pavel Mintyukov is how many times in a game is he below the offensive goal line. And that's been happening quite a few times the last couple of games, where he's so involved offensively that he ends up below the other team's goal line. So good to see. But yeah, so let's get into the actual games, though, because I think that's the thing that we really have to dig into here. So let's just go game by game, general impressions here. But let's start with the big win, the win at home. Ducks win their home opener 4-3 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Sidney Crosby in town. You get the late goal from Chris Kreider on the power play. Chris Kreider also scored on the power play earlier in the game. Cutter Gauthier scoring a really nice goal off a feed from Pavel Mintyukov. You had Drew Hellison getting on the board with kind of a seeing eye point shot. Just kind of what stood out to you. Let's start with the positives. What stood out for you in a kind of a positive manner in that game?
Okay, positives was the stick-to-itiveness, the intestinal fortitude.
Wow.
Because and the power play. The power play got a lot of opportunities in that game. That was the game where it felt like that was the most realized version of what the Jay Woodcroft power play would be. And I think we got a good sense of how it operates, what its goals are, how it wants to manipulate the structure. They got, obviously, again, a lot of opportunities. So I thought that was a huge plus. Do you remember how many power play goals they scored?
It was
two power play goals. Yeah, so successful as well. And then the big goals late are, you're going to need to score those goals. Chemistry was, you're kind of seeing the, I think that was the first game where they put Killorn on with Kreider and Leo. But
yeah,
anyway,
that was the change. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so we're starting to see how the chemistry is coming together and players are reading off of each other in every zone, and so I think those are my positives. What were yours?
No, I agree. I think that the power play was for sure that the headline of that game. I mean, you score 2 power play goals, but it's also just kind of the way that they looked. Like you touched on, it was really clear what they were trying to do, but it wasn't necessarily like they were telegraphing it. There was a lot of puck movement. There was a lot of moving the bodies off of the puck, and also I think that what's kind of cool about this power play when it's working, because the next 2 games are going to be a bit of a different story, but when it's working, it doesn't necessarily feel like anyone on the ice is just tethered to a spot on the ice. Like one guy may start on the right flank, he might end up at the point, he might then end up on the goal line or on the bumper. Like the guys are moving around quite a bit, and I think that's kind of what you have to do when you don't have a big shot on the power play. You kind of just have to make it as unpredictable and as chaotic as possible, and they did that. The other thing that I wanted to touch on with this game, though, was Troy Terry. He hit, I think, 2 crossbars, maybe more than that. But his shot was really, it was looking really good in this game, and I think he was actually on a line with Granlund and Kallorn in this game. So this may have been pre-switch,
Okay.
or the switch happened in the game. I don't know. Losing track of it all, but
I know already. Same.
But Troy Terry, I mean, looking pretty dangerous in this game. Any notes on him, just his early season? And I mean, this is still an important player for the Ducks. You know, he's not a kid anymore. We don't view him in that way, but maybe a little quiet offensively.
Quiet offensively, sure. I think he made a pretty big defensive mistake in probably I think the Sharks game on the PK. But all in all, I mean, he's in a more suitable role. He's not the guy so relied on to be the sole driver of offense for the entire team like he had been at points in years past, especially last year. So, you know, maybe he's just adapting to that. But I think there were stretches where he's looked dangerous. He's just not the first line 37 goal scorer that he was a few years ago. But I don't know if that was ever what he was going to be. And then defensively, aside from that one gaff, I thought he's been pretty good and pretty disruptive, especially in the neutral zone. But yeah, he is the puck guy on that line. He's the guy who carries the mail. And you know, I think it's just that line has been the one struggling to generate. But at the same time, maybe they're getting tougher matchups. I haven't really dug into that, and they also have the new guy Granlund, who's, you know, in a position he wasn't in the preseason, where that was Ryan Strome's. So I don't know, not really a whole lot of takeaways there.
Yeah, this game was interesting because if you look at the stats, which, you know, we don't have Jake here, so I feel like I should point out some stats in his absence. But the stats were pretty even. You know, the Ducks didn't necessarily control the play at 5-on-5, and I would say that if you kind of watch the game, that's kind of how it felt. The Ducks didn't really dominate. They did have their moments of their bouts of sloppiness in this game as well, you know, giving up some high quality chances against. And it was really the power play that kind of lifted them across the finish line. You touched on something, though, which I do think is a little bit of a theme so far this season. And I just want the Beckett Seneca people to put your earmuffs on if you get upset at anything that I say about Beckett Seneca. Just skip ahead. Hit the 15-second button a few times. Okay, so for everyone that's still here, looking at the Ducks lines right now, you mentioned Troy Terry being on the third line, or on a line with Vatrano and Granlund, and that line not necessarily shining. Well, here's the thought. Frank Vatrano is not necessarily the guy I would want to have with Troy Terry. And I like Mikael Granlund, but he is very much a product of his surroundings as a player. And, I mean, this line is basically just a slightly better version of Strome, Vatrano, Terry last year, which we all kind of agreed is not great for Terry. So my wonder is this. Yes, Beckett Seneca has impressed, has scored some goals, has looked good on the kid line with McTavish and Gauthier, but in an optimal sense, would it not be better to have Terry with Gauthier and McTavish?
I'd be interested in that, and I'd be for it, just to, you know, kind of maybe spark Terry a little bit and see if that can, you know, we can reach new heights with that line, because Beckett Seneca is still a rookie, and it still seems like he's being carried a little bit by McTavish and Gauthier, who I think have been pretty good, especially McTavish. Gauthier has his hiccups defensively, but yeah, I'd be interested in a change like that. Especially, it makes sense, like we talked about last week, the kind of how the pieces of the puzzle fit together, and I think that makes sense as far as, like, you have now two guys on McTavish's wing who are adept at carrying pucks through neutral and establishing forechecks and little things like that. So I'm interested to see how that would play out.
Yeah, I am too, because I think, again, all due respect to Beckett Seneca, but he is not better than Troy Terry at this point in his NHL career. And I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And so if you are trying to win, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because right now you have McTavish and Gauthier with Seneca, and like you said, I do agree that they are carrying him a bit, which not unusual. But if you're trying to make the playoffs, do you necessarily want to have a guy on your second line who you're having to carry? And then, so if you move him off of that line, well, now he's on the third line, and it's kind of the same problem because he's with Vatrano and Granlund. That's not as good for his development. It's not as good for the short term of the team. So there isn't necessarily a good answer here for Joel Quenneville, and that's why I'm not going to push on this too hard. But this does kind of show that once Ryan Strome comes back, which seems to be a little unclear when that will be, I do wonder just what Seneca's role is going to be, because I think the last couple of games have been a little less, just a little less impressive from him. So, yeah. Okay, but let's move on then to the Carolina Hurricanes game. So Hurricanes win this one 4-1 against the Ducks, and after a very exciting win against Pittsburgh, this was probably the first game where it felt like, okay, it might be time to pump the brakes a little bit. But I will say, like, starting off with the positives, I think that there were pockets of this game where the Ducks actually looked pretty good. I thought that in the first period, despite trailing, to me, they looked like the better team at times in this game. I don't know if you saw it that way, though.
Better team for stretches, I suppose. Yes, right. I'd say more so they kept their heads above water and kind of counterpunched a little bit, which is good. But the game kind of went as was expected. I mean, Carolina's the best team in the Eastern Conference right now, and I mentioned before they were a well-oiled machine. But and that kind of played out, and the numbers kind of reflected kind of what we all expected of this game. But I thought that they answered well, and the things that I was disappointed with in the Pittsburgh game, which that felt like the most disappointing game to me of the three from the last week, was the Pittsburgh game, because because I saw a lot of seam passes that weren't present before, and like defensive zone coverage breakdowns that were supposed to be fixed by now. And little things like the tying up the sticks in front of the net led to three goals. So that sloppy play that you talked about, I didn't see quite as much of it in the Carolina game. Like that, those instances were kind of cleaned up, and which is especially important against a team like Carolina, who is very much a shot volume team, and you have to tie those sticks up and get rid of those seams. So I liked that aspect, but this one was the game where they made the little mental mistakes. That was really costly. So, but I was impressed with how they counterpunched Carolina and stuck with them, especially in the defensive zone when they started kind of winning pucks and keeping possession for extended periods of time in the offensive zone.
Yeah, there were good stretches, and I do agree that when we probably didn't talk about it enough, but in the Pittsburgh game, the defensive game was just not very present. And I do think that this game, despite looking worse from a numbers standpoint, I do think they felt a little more solid at times. It's just that they had the back-breaking mistakes that you just can't have. I mean, Jackson Lacombe's turnover on the fourth goal. Just I don't know what to say. I mean, well, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny because go ahead. Yeah.
No, we talked about the casualness of his play, but he kind of walked the line of poise and casual, I feel like, in that instance.
Yeah, I mean, he tries just a very needless play in that situation where, yes, he's a great slick defenseman who can dangle, who can skate, all of that, but there's just a time and place, and when you're trailing 2 goals in a close game late in the game, it's just not necessarily the time to try to dangle around guys, especially because it wasn't like there was this great opportunity on the other side of that. It was just kind of a routine play where he could have easily gone another direction, and I don't know. let me ask you this: how have you felt about his game this season? Because I'm having a tough time getting super fired up about what I've seen from him so far.
I thought he's been pretty solid. I think he's
Yeah,
that mistake was not great, and I think one of the goals in front in the Pittsburgh game was on him too. But other than those instances, I thought he's been a really good penalty killer and really, just a good play killer in the neutral zones and in the defensive zone, and breaking out is his forte, his specialty, and I think he's been good in that aspect. Not the point total we're looking for, or the chance generation that we kind of saw last year, but bigger role. I don't know, but I think he's been solid. Other than but it's kind of Jackson Lacombe. That's kind of what we saw last year too.
Yeah.
Was really, really solid, and then one or two big mistakes, and they were costly.
yeah. I guess it's just for me. You're right. He hasn't been bad at all. It's just now maybe the expectations are a little higher. I mean, his extension hasn't kicked in, but he doesn't necessarily have the same. The bar is just higher for him now. But anyway, outside of that, in this game, I did think that this was probably Seneca's most difficult game so far. He has looked better since, but this was the game where, it felt a lot like the preseason, where getting pushed off of pucks, turning the puck over, just kind of doing too much at times. And I mean, I'm not really going to go too far into that just because you're playing the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, this was the team, this was the game where he was going to struggle in.
Yep.
So, and then outside of that, I mean, I don't really have a ton of takeaways from this game. I mean, did you have anything else that stuck out to you in this one?
Seth Jarvis is really good at hockey.
Okay, about the other team. Okay, well then we can go on that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Ducks wise, I don't know if Dostal stood a chance on any of those. That was we talked about how that's just a team that's just in your face all the time, and they create those opportunities for themselves where they kind of put you in a bad spot, and it's just about how you respond. And I think at least that game kind of came early enough in the season where they kind of can understand this is how quick I have to make this decision at this time. Granlund, makes a good play to evade a pressure and then tries to throw a hospital pass to Troy Terry, and he gets picked off like that. But he understands now, hopefully, that Terry's going to be in that spot in that instance. So it's the big mistakes weren't there. Like the big overarching issues weren't there. Like I liked the line deployment and again how the defensive zone structure was, but the little backbreaking mistakes are frustrating.
Well, I guess to go back to a positive, the goal that they scored in this game was a thing of beauty.
Yes.
Because that was where you had the Ducks starting in their own zone. Minchikov makes a nice little play to get it over to Helleson. Helleson just sends it up the ice to Killorn. And this is another thing we talked about last week. Killorn finds Leo Carlsson busting up the ice with speed, hits him in stride, and they go in 2-on-1, and Carlsson rips it home. I mean, not to pat our own backs here, but this is kind of what we wanted to see, talking about Carlsson last week.
Yeah, the ability to his initial quickness I think has increased, and he's just jumping on pucks and jumping out of the zone and recognizing those chances to utilize his speed, and then looking off Chris Kreider for that goal was pretty special. That's special Leo Carlsson stuff. That's the kind of game breaking skill that he has the potential to bring every game.
Yeah, it's so interesting just how he really isn't, I think, what most people thought he was going to be, at least so far in the NHL. He's still quite young. But, I mean, just on that shot, that if you just, freeze frame the shot when he takes it, his shot mechanics have really improved, where he had a really good kind of whippy shot when he came into the league, but on that play, not only does he look off Kreider, like you talked about, but then he also turns his whole body, so he's got his knees bent, all of his weight is transferring, all that energy is going into the stick, and he just gets all of it. And I mean, he beats an NHL goalie clean. I mean, it goes through Anderson. So yes, there was a little deception, but there's just raw power on that shot thanks to his mechanics. And it's just funny thinking about how when we were talking about the 2023 draft, how you have this big Swedish center who's getting comparisons to Anze Kopitar, and he's kind of nothing like that. He's just a freight train. He's a bullet. I mean, how have you kind of seen that evolution for him a little bit?
I mean, yeah, like you nailed it. Like the 23 draft, it was like this. That's the kind of play like I was expecting Adam Fantilli to make.
Right.
You know, that's the player that he was hyped up to be. Leo Carlsson was said to be a more of a tactician, a plotting kind of almost lumbering centerman who didn't have the foot speed to keep up, which is like laughable now, like seeing almost 2 years of him. So it's just funny to think back on how he was just compared to these bigger European players that, like, again, were just smart, and that's how they kind of built their offense. And now Leo is this, like, just bullet shot out of a chamber every chance he gets to pounce on loose pucks, and he beats guys wide consistently and backs defenders up nonstop. He's using his speed, his elite speed, as a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast last week, but we were definitely texting about this, where his comparison, sometimes he looks a lot more like Evgeny Malkin than he does like an Anze Kopitar. Not the same level of skill or whatever, but like he just has that kind of bowling ball mentality. And yeah, it's just so interesting how, when you would watch his clips from his draft season where, his skating it's not the worst thing in the world, but you can see that it's not a huge strength. He's kind of straight-legged and all that. And then now his skating, like you said, I think he's gained a step, or he's just a little more twitchy. He's using a lot more crossovers, and he's fast. He's an above average NHL skater. This is not what was. I mean, it just kind of goes to show how the draft is such a crapshoot, because even the Ducks' own evaluation of him, that what we heard about constantly was, they picked Carlsson over Fantilli in part because of the hockey IQ. And it's funny because Leo's now doing the Fantilli things, and I'm not sure if the hockey IQ is really the strong suit for him right now. Like it might be later on, but like right now the headline is the physical tools more than anything. So okay, well we could talk about the draft for another hour if we did that. Because we may or may not have done a podcast called Crash the Draft last year.
That's our bread and butter. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's move on here from the Carolina game and get to yesterday's game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, this is the one that's freshest in the memory bank. So Ducks lose to the lowly Hawks, or are they lowly? We don't know that yet, or do we? I don't know. But they lose 2-1 in overtime. A game in which the game itself was 0-0 going into the third period. Frank Nazar, the Hawks take the lead, and then in the dying seconds of the game, Mason McTavish with just a beautiful, beautiful shot, a finish on his off wing in that right circle. Just a perfect shot to beat the goalie. Ducks eventually drop it in OT. Ryan Donato scores in kind of a weird sequence. Let's do the same thing we did the other games. What are the positives from this game? What should people be excited about from this game?
Well, so as like just watching that hockey game, it was right up my alley as far as stylistically, because I thought like both teams broke pucks out pretty cleanly and then would just constantly create transition offense, and then there'd be like a play where the defenseman would break it up like just so cleanly and expertly, textbook. And I was like that. And then the goaltending was great. So just from if I'm taking like an unbiased view, that was a great hockey game for a hockey nerd like me, who like the 7-6 games are fun, but not necessarily my cup of tea. I almost would prefer a 2-1 overtime win in which there are just rush chances shut down by great defense.
Right.
But that said, I thought the Ducks controlled play when they were supposed to control play. I think they were the better team in that game. They were generating the more high quality looks, in my opinion. just off by a little bit, they would try to like scoop a puck around a diving defenseman, but the diving defenseman was Alex Vlasic, who's awesome. So, so little things like that just didn't connect in the quote moment of truth. But I thought those chances presented themselves more for the Ducks, and their cycle game was really good, defensive game was really good. So that was just a fun hockey game, and Spencer Knight was pretty great, and
yeah, he's good,
damn near unbeatable in that game. So I liked the effort from the Ducks though as a whole, and that was probably the most encouraging of these three for me.
It didn't help that the Ducks also were a little unlucky, where you had Leo Carlsson dangling through the entire Blackhawks team, including Spencer Knight, but then hitting a post and kind of inexplicably having an open net. And I don't know what he thought, that maybe the play was dead or something, but he almost like didn't just tap it in when he could have. I think he also might have thought he scored after, like he kind of put a stick. It was weird. It was just a really weird sequence. Yeah. And then Chris Kreider hit a post too, a shot from the slot in the dying minutes of the game. But a couple of things that I want to point out about this game in terms of a positive is that for some reason the Ducks went 11 forward, 7 defensemen in this game, which I don't fully get, because they had 12 healthy forwards, and I think the preference is to play 4 lines when you can. So we don't know why they did that, so I'm not going to spend too much time speculating on it. But the effect of that was that Ross Johnston was scratched, which is probably a good thing, Ian Moore, though, a wild Ian Moore appears, and he was plugged into a weird situation, taking shifts at forward at times, which I did not have on my bingo card this season at all, but he looked really good. He was one of the Ducks' best players in that game, I thought. Like, he was just so steady, doing the things that he's expected to do, but then going beyond that and also creating offense. What did you make of the Ian Moore experience in that game?
I thought you saw a lot of what Ian can make Ian Moore special. That's a player who I really like, and odd situation, no consistent defensive partner, no, he was playing forward, but I like on both sides of the puck. I thought he was really good, killing plays and breaking out, using his speed. There was a sequence at the offensive blue line where he kind of like shoulder faked a shot and then kind of created some space to make a pass to the right, I believe. I forget how the sequence ended, but it was like those little things where you're not expecting from a rookie who's 4 games in to have that kind of poise. I know Quenneville had said he liked what he saw in the like brief practices that Ian Moore had with the team, and you're kind of expecting him to go on this road trip and just be the 7th defenseman who probably doesn't get in. But to see him utilized like this is interesting, to say the least. I'm not against it. Maybe against having him as a forward.
Yeah.
But as far as going 11-7 is interesting, just because in theory you can get your best players on the ice a little bit more and kind of maybe play with those line combinations that we talked about. Again, in theory. But as far as Ian Moore goes, I really enjoyed his game, and I thought he was a two-way impactful player.
Yeah, he was really good. I am just such a fan of his game. I mean, it's hard not to like him. I mean, he kind of does everything well, and the smooth skating, puck moving, right shot defenseman with size. I mean, these are the guys that usually do pretty well in the NHL. Tend to get a lot of contracts. So one thing I'm curious about though is like, what is with this whole playing him at forward thing? Is that a matter of, hey, we just want to give you some. We just want to keep you engaged in the game. We don't want you sitting there on the bench for 6-7 minutes at a time. Is that giving the forward some rest? I mean, do you have any theories as to that?
Column A, column B a little bit. I think maybe just early in the game he had a shift at forward, didn't want to mess up his lines. I have no idea. Very interesting. Yeah.
He only took maybe 1 shift per period at forward. It wasn't a bunch, but it was just, it was odd. I've never seen that. I've never seen that. And I've been watching the NHL for a little while. So other positives from this game. I mean, the 2 that I really want to note are, I'll start with the hero of the night, despite the Ducks losing, but Mason McTavish. I mean, what a goal, what a shot. That's why that guy got that money. And just watching him through these first 5 games, he has been really quietly impressive. He doesn't necessarily have the gaudy numbers or anything, but I feel like he's not necessarily getting enough credit for the role he's playing right now, because you kind of touched on it. You know, Cutter Gauthier has been good in spurts, but he's not always the most solid without the puck, and even with the puck in the defensive zone. Um, what have you made of McTavish's first 5 games and just kind of the role that he's playing for this team?
Yeah, that's the guy I have zero negative things to say about his game through 5 games. I mean, 5 points, goal and 4 assists. He's driving that line legitimately, a line that is, dominating possession numbers if I'm correct in that. And he's the oldest on that line. He's taken on a leadership role, but just I think his playmaking he looks faster. His playmaking is on another level. He's finding Cutter Gauthier, through seams from the far boards to the other goal line, like things that I didn't know that Mason McTavish was capable of. And then the shot is obviously the thing he was known for coming out of the draft, his like tenacity and his shot. And we got to see that fully on display with that goal, which was just wildly impressive, especially with the way Spencer Knight was playing. Like that was the only way that guy was getting beat in that game, was like the most perfect shot you could think of. So yeah, I think to be driving a line like that between a sophomore winger who isn't perfect, and then obviously Beckett Seneca, who's a 19-year-old rookie, and kind of elevating their games too. I've been very impressed with him, and defensively as well. I haven't seen the Mason McTavish like losing a guy in coverage thing that happened, in the past couple of years. So I really enjoyed his game, and I'm impressed.
Yeah, he's been great. And to your point about the numbers, so yeah, that line through 5 games, so it's a small sample, but just to give you an idea of how they played, when they're on the ice, they're controlling over 60% of the shot attempts and the expected goals. And anything above 50 is already pretty good, but once you get into the 60s, like you are dominating play, and that's what they are doing. I should say that's what they have done. We'll see. It's just 5 games, but they have been good. And yeah, I just think that like what he's doing is not easy, because his wingers are not. You just see it on the ice. They are not the ones necessarily driving the play. They are playing their roles, to the extent that they can. It's just without McTavish there, I don't think that line is nearly as successful. And yeah, I just rewatched the shot as we were talking here. Like there was not a lot of net to shoot at. That was fitted into a very tight window. I mean, short side, high. I mean, you could say Spencer Knight was a little screened by his own defenseman on that play, but geez, what a shot. And I love Mason McTavish's goal celebrations too. that guy loves scoring goals, and I am all about guys who love scoring goals. Mm-hmm. That's the best. But you mentioned so this is where we flip the page a little bit to the negatives. So you mentioned Mason McTavish and not making the defensive mistakes this season that we've seen in years past. Mm-hmm. I'm curious for your view on the goal in overtime, because that is a play, to refresh people's memory, where the Ducks come in on a 2-on-1. It's Leo Carlsson and Mason McTavish. End of a shift, I believe, for both, or at least for Leo. Leo goes across the ice, but flubs the pass. It goes into the corner. McTavish tries to recover it, gets easily beat off the puck, turns into a 3-on-1 where it's Sam Renzel, Donato, and Bedard against Ian Moore. McTavish takes a while to get back. He goes below the goal line, and that leaves Donato all alone in front. Somehow Dostal is like swimming out of his net, gets to the front. Donato scores, and all the while, Leo Carlsson is still not back in the picture. He's still somewhere off in La La Land. We don't know. Who do you blame on that goal, or is there anyone to blame?
I don't know. Overtime is such a hard thing to gauge. If it's not like a clean one-on-one, this guy beat this guy in this instance, I don't really know if anyone's to blame, because that's just kind of the nature of the beast. If there's a chance one way and it's non-successful, there's going to be a chance the other way 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anyone really to blame. That was just a good, tenacious sequence by Chicago. That's just overtime to me.
That's fair.
I don't have anything. It's kind of like the other goal that they scored too. Is just like, I don't know where that play broke down. It just kind of like a weird bouncing sequence that that just kind of happened to fall in the Blackhawks sticks, and that's just hockey at times.
No, I mean, I think that's fair. I do think that overtime is a very strange beast where it's not real hockey, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's 3-on-3. It's kind of a different sport. I do think it's just odd that McTavish sees Donato wide open in front and just skates past him. Just like, I'm going somewhere else, and leaves Donato there. To McTavish's credit, like, that's not the guy that he should be worried about. It's Carlsson that should be getting back there. So I would like McTavish and Carlsson to just skate back a little harder on that play. I know it's the end of a shift, and I know that it's easy for me to say sitting here with my clicker looking at a screen and just nitpicking everything. But like, it's the NHL. I know you're tired, but like, if you want to win, you got to bear down a little bit. And I'm sure that that's what they were told by someone later down the line, maybe not immediately after the fact. But yeah, like, I'm with you where there's not like a grand takeaway for me on that play. It's just kind of a weird sequence, and that is what tends to happen in overtime. So anyway, the other thing I wanted to point out about this game is that Leo Carlsson was just, I mean, we already kind of talked about it, but he was just a threat. He was a threat the entire game, and it was almost absurd where every chance he had, he was just going, attacking, 1-on-1, 1-on-2, 1-on-3, and it was almost to a point where in overtime, like he tried to go 1-on-3, and there was just no play to be made whatsoever. And I do think that fatigue may have contributed to that final goal against, where he just had nothing left. And if you manage your energy a little bit, maybe you have more in the tank. But what did you make of just his night and his impact overall in that game?
That's kind of like, I'm almost kind of jaded to Leo
Right.
Carlsson now. Just watching.
It's not noteworthy.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, that's what he's supposed to do. And I'm just like, for whatever reason, I was more critical of Leo in that game than I was in previous. Just because, he's just supposed to lead those rushes and create those opportunities. And like, yeah, he was super deadly and very impressive. I would have liked to see him. I need to see him kind of getting back to a little bit of the negatives, if you don't mind.
Yes. This is the place. That's what we're going for.
Right. As good as the power play looked against Pittsburgh, I thought it definitely wasn't as good against Carolina, which was expected. Again, great penalty kill. This game, I thought that when Leo's not on puck on the power play, he is kind of, I don't like using the term lost, but it's like he's not finding these seams when the puck is on the other side of the ice that he needs to be finding. If he's going to take this superstar leap we all need him and expect him to take, he needs to be a puck magnet at all times. Make yourself an option at all times. Sometimes he watches a little bit from a standstill and behind a defender when it's like you just need to move your feet a little bit more north and you'll find a seam. Or with the puck even, he's constantly looking to attack the high danger areas, which is great. But on a power play, you don't necessarily have to attack downhill at the net all the time. You can you manipulate and use the speed we were talking about to open things up for yourself and your teammates,
Yeah.
So I'd like to see a little bit more progress in that aspect. And I think that's the next step I would like to see him take in his progression.
I completely agree. And I do think that it may come across as nitpicky, but it is just true that like he is a second overall pick. He's a first line center. He is kind of expected to be the franchise player, and these guys are just held to different standards. And I do think that where he is in his progression is very fascinating because he has turned into something that I don't think anyone expected him to be, which is this speedy rush player, whereas he was billed as a playmaking kind of cerebral center. And now I'm just wondering, does he really see the game that well? Does he really have this kind of understanding of time and space and manipulation? Because it's exactly what you're just saying, where when the table is kind of set and he can't just put his head down and attack like a running back in football, just take the ball and go. He kind of doesn't really have another element to his game. He doesn't have that kind of, all right, I'm going to let things just marinate. I'm going to make one play to get to the next play to then get to that dangerous play. Like, he doesn't really have that tactician ability yet. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's something that can develop over time, but it doesn't necessarily feel like he makes other people better as of right now. It kind of feels like you have to play his game when you're with him and make him better, which is fine because he's very good, but I don't necessarily see him elevating his teammates per se. Is that too harsh of a take?
Maybe he's 135 games into his career.
Right, exactly. This is
he's
all like
had
right
injuries.
now.
Yeah, he's still growing, maybe. I don't know. He's, still tacking on the mass. And learning NHL games. Like, I don't know if I wrote about it, but if you look at a lot of European superstars now, the Nikita Kucherovs and Leon Draisaitl, Rantanen, these guys, they kind of, Pastrnak, they struggled the first 100 to 150 games. They weren't putting up these gaudy numbers. And it took to year 3 where Leo is now for them to really take off offensively, like we're seeing out of Leo. And maybe I haven't dug into it. I don't know if I can go back and watch all those games, but the tactician aspects might not have, they might have come even later for those players that we now view as some of the smartest and obviously most gifted players that are were kind of in Leo's situation all those years ago. So I'm not ready to declare him a one-dimensional type of player who's incapable of that. I will say that we talked about it a few minutes ago. The draft analysis may have been misguided, but he has a little bit of those high IQ elements. But right now, what he is kind of what he is, which is just a bowling ball, like you said.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's completely fair. Like, we do need to see more, and this is all just me assessing what's like in front of me. I'm not declaring him whatever. It's just that's what it looks like right now, and it will be interesting to see if he can add that. It's also kind of like important to note that he has been playing for Greg Cronin the last 2 years. That's the only NHL environment he's ever been in. So you kind of have to balance, like, what is the coaching he's getting? What is he being asked to do? And I do think that, at least in the role he's in right now, he doesn't necessarily have to do anything more than what he's doing because he's playing with guys who are just feeding him, which is great. Again, I think that's if he's just a one-dimensional player, his one dimension is damn good. So no issues there. But it would be nice to see him kind of in a situation where he kind of has to think the game a little bit more. Is that necessarily as good for the team? No, I think that where he is right now is perfect for the team. I mean, this is how you get the most of him right now. But I do remember, like, last year, maybe it was even 2 years ago, when someone named Trevor Zegras was still on this team. This might have been last year when Zegras and Carlsson were on the same line together. I think you could see Carlsson thinking the game a little bit more because they would have those cycle shifts. Oh yeah, this was definitely 2 years ago because I remember this from a Coyotes game at the Mullet Arena, where they would get into these cycles, and you could see Zegras being such a clever playmaker. Leo could keep up with him on those shifts, and he could kind of fill those gaps and whatnot. So I think it is there. It's just we just want to see more of it. We want to see it come out more often. So anyway, we'll see. These are not like huge problems to have, by the way.
No, these are great problems to have. Like,
yeah,
we are we're nitpicking, but again, like you said, franchise players are held to a higher standard. Like, we're not picking apart Frank Vatrano's game like this, and
no.
It's it's a very good problem to have, I would say.
And it's also, this does really, really matter just in terms of the outlook of the team, because if Leo Carlsson, how good he can get, because he's going to be very good. It's just whether he's very good, whether he's elite, whether he's a superstar, like that will help determine how far this team can go in its contention window once it gets there, if it's already there. And so that's why this matters quite a bit. So on that note, any other? Oh, I have another note here from the week, and I was poo-pooed a bit for this take on Twitter yesterday, but I believe it. I think Radko Gudas has looked pretty decent so far. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, I'm shocked because I was honestly ready to be like, this guy is just playing games to make it to the Olympic break, and then he might even just call it and be like, oh, I got my knee. But I've been so impressed with Gudas's game. The timing things that he would just miss an open ice hit and it would be so costly. That's gone. He's making smart plays from behind the goal line. It's not high flips out. It's like he's looking for curling centers on breakouts. He's still shooting everything, which is kind of what you expect. But, I'm like defensively, he's been really good. And I'm just almost blown away by a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
With his performance.
Yeah, I think that he really looks more like the Gudas from 2 years ago, where he's not really doing anything that impressive, but like in terms of just nothing too flashy, but he's just playing a solid game. He's in the right spots. He's breaking up plays. He's making that simple outlet pass. He has this thing that's really funny to me where he'll, on a breakout, if it's like a controlled breakout, he'll just kind of slow down and just kind of stand there and do like a half slap shot fake, and then do like a pass to the opposite side of the ice. He does that every time. If you watch him on the breakout, that's just his thing. Nobody else on the team, not a lot of people in hockey do this anymore. Like he'll just stand there, and he's like a quarterback in the pocket in football, just like waiting for an option to open up. And to his credit, this season he's been finding that outlet. So yeah, he's been solid. And I mean, to throw in some numbers here, because I'm trying to do a better job of that this week, is talk about some numbers. The pairing the pairing of Lacombe and Gudas, they haven't been great numbers wise, but they are, in terms of shot attempts, they are controlling the shot attempts. They're over 53%. Expected goals haven't been as positive, below 50, but just to be getting like somewhat respectable numbers from Gudas so far is, like you said, I had no expectation of that whatsoever. Another little number note is that the best Ducks pairing this season by the numbers, 61% of the expected goals, Jacob Trouba and Olen Zellweger. Take a bow, Jacob Trouba. All the naysayers, all the crash the ponders, rub some egg on your face because you were wrong about Jacob Trouba. Has that pairing stood out to you at all, or is this just kind of small sample noise?
I don't know. They're so, I don't know, volatile. I just like watching, like Zellweger just creates out of nothing. So I think maybe a lot of those chances have been just purely off of his skill and the way he attacks, because he is on another level right now.
Yeah,
numbers obviously he's not like producing as much as like the numbers might suggest, but my God, is that guy super active and creating and doing everything you wanted Olen Zellweger to do since he jumped into the league and since we saw him in juniors. And Trouba, to his credit, has been very solid since his like one big mistake against the Sharks, I believe, that we kind of got on him about. But the way he approaches the game kind of just drives me crazy, but it's kind of effective. His just like big gaps that he uses, and he just kind of like baits players into taking shots, and he'll just get a stick on it so it goes wide. Little things like that. I'm just like, just show some more effort. But no, he's actually been pretty good, and that pairing has been just eye-opening a little bit. Surprising.
Yeah, I will say, and I hate to say this because I am on the record being pretty skeptical of Jacob Trouba, but this is also true for Gudas. There are times in games where you watch very closely, and when guys go into the corner against him, if all he does is just kind of turn his shoulder a little bit at the guy, guys get scared. Guys like kind of slow up just a little bit. I'm not making this up. I could pull up clips. Like, I'm not saying that makes him a great player, but there is something to that. Of he does bring a toughness and a physicality that is pretty rare on this team, and we can debate how much that truly matters. But when he's not making those huge mistakes, which is a pretty big caveat, but when he's not doing that, him and Zellweger do work pretty well together. They're just very complementary. You have one guy who's slow, who his favorite play is going D to D on the breakout. And then you have Zellweger, who's just kind of everywhere, and it works. So we'll see if it continues, but so far, so good. So we're an hour in. This is a good time to pivot to questions. So if you are watching us live on YouTube right now or on Twitch, throw in your question into the chat, and we will get to that. But first, we will start with questions from our patrons-only Discord server. So if you want to join the fun, we'll plug it at the end of the show. But this is a great Ducks fan community, our Discord. It's also just a great place to connect with us, connect with other fans. There's also different channels about different topics. It's not exclusive to the Ducks, so a great place to join. And the big benefit in these little circumstances is that we start with your questions first on the pod, and then we eventually get to the YouTube and Twitch. So we'll start with this question from Fuddy24. Asks, who do you guys think is gone at the deadline this year? So cheery note, but who's your pick to get sold off at the deadline?
Oh
if it got to that point. I mean, obviously, like, it's purely hypothetical, but who would be the guy?
So is this hypothetical, like, if the Ducks are out of the playoffs and they're sellers?
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you this then. Let me kind of frame this a bit more. So do you think that if the Ducks, how far out of the playoffs do you think the Ducks would have to be to sell at the deadline?
I don't remember how they, like, what the record was.
Like dead in the water?
Like last year, they were like, they were still kind of in the mix.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
But there was like that string of games that really like put the nail in the coffin that Verbeek was kind of like, okay, fine, I'll pull the trigger on this Dumoulin deal. I think it's got to be a situation like that where, okay, they're done.
10 points?
10, sure. I don't remember what it was at the time, but it has to be a situation like that. I don't know like what I don't know what like a good gauge is to see how far a team is out of the playoffs to where it warrants a sell. But
I think if they're anywhere close, they are not selling. I just think that Verbeek is not going to do his buddy Joel Quenneville dirty like that and trade him a veteran. So they have to be well out of it. But let's assume that happens. Let's just go down that rabbit hole. Who would be the guy that would get traded?
So looking at their contracts and stuff, the guy that like sticks out weirdly is Ryan Strome, who is kind of a huge leader in the clubhouse. He's like almost
unreal. His favorite word.
Yeah, obviously unreal. No, but just looking, he has no trade protection. He makes $5 million, which is kind of nothing now with the rising cap, and is going to keep being nothing. He's got a year after this one left. Again, no trade protection. So his with full retention, $2.5 million for a guy who literally scores 41 points every single year and can bring that kind of veteran aesthetic and presence. I think that can get you probably a pretty penny on an open trade market. So I think he's the guy that sticks out, even though like it doesn't make any sense from an organizational standpoint to like, cause
he was at the presser for Quenneville. Yeah. He was waiting for Coach Q.
He is so ingrained in the team, and he's a big part of what makes them go emotionally. So, but I don't know, for whatever reason, that's the one that sticks out.
Well, if we're talking value, he would probably have the most value, because the obvious candidates would be like Ryan Poehling, pending UFA, Ross Johnston, Trouba, and Gudas. I mean, Gudas is your captain, so probably not happening. Maybe Jansen Harkins if he's healthy. Peter Mrazek. I mean, they have a bunch of pending UFAs. Yeah. But do any of those guys get you anything of note? I mean, it would have to be a Trouba or a Gudas, and I just don't
Yeah.
know if either of those guys are getting traded. So Strom is a very interesting answer. I do think, though, that in a way, if you look at the Ducks lineup right now, I mean, this issue of where to slot in Strom is going to persist next year because Seneca's still going to be there. He's going to be more ingrained. Vatrano's in a multi-year deal. Granlund's in a multi-year deal. Terry's going to be there. Like, he kind of doesn't necessarily have a spot in the top 9 next year. So maybe trading him at the deadline is almost the way to go to just get out ahead of it. Food for thought, but we have plenty of time to discuss the Ryan Strome trade possibility. Let's see. Move on to the next question here. This one is from Shaken Wings, and this is a great question because I actually wanted to throw something like this at you and just forgot. So Shaken Wings asks, do you think that Bedard is a franchise player? Does he project to be better than Leo Carlsson?
I meant to get to this in the Blackhawks game, but Bedard's special. Like, he had 9 shots in that game, 11 attempts.
Really? Oh, man,
yeah.
I didn't see that.
The way, there's a couple plays, he would just bolt down the wing and get this shot off that had, it's 10 out of 10 times this shot gets a stick on it and blocked and just like trickles lazily to the corner. Bedard can get that shot off. He changes the angle so well that even the defender can't like react in time and can put it through legs and to where it still has so much power, more power than anyone's shot in the league. And like Louis Dostal had a difficult time even fighting off these shots that are so innocuous and just, so routine to anyone else. And but he's added these new layers of playmaking and manipulation, and his puck control is really good, and the way he kind of manipulates the defender in front of him and creates space, and his vision. I think he's on a line with Burakovsky and Bertuzzi right now, and he's making them look like all-stars. And no, Bedard is and will be better than Leo Carlsson. Just plain and simple. He's special. He's a franchise superstar, player.
I'm gonna expose your teammate at the Hockey News for a quick second here.
Okay.
Our buddy Derek said in the Discord yesterday, so again, I'm breaching a lot of confidentiality here. I apologize. He said that Leo will for sure be a better all-around player than Bedard. Your reaction to that take?
All around is doing a lot of work.
Well, offense is part of the all-around. We need to keep that in mind.
If Leo can become the player that the draft experts anticipated that he'd be, the Andrei Kopitar, Barkov, and also have this crazy level of offense, then there's a chance. But I would have Bedard 10 out of 10 times.
Okay.
So I disagree with old Leeser.
Wow. Civil war at the Hockey News. You heard it here first. No, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation to be had, and I don't think Derek is fully out to lunch there, because I do think that you could at least envision, Leo Carlsson, big center, right? There's still this debate of, is Bedard a center? Leo Carlsson, big, smart, skates well. Like, you can visualize it. I think it's a little strong to say for sure, but I see where he's coming from, and I think I've seen worse takes, put it that way.
Yeah.
But
also, a lot of it has to do with kind of, again, what we talked about last week, where Leo's potential for being a super impactful playoff performer may be a little higher, just because the playoffs, again, are such a different, almost different sport, hockey in the playoffs. And I think Leo's catered to that maybe a little more. So while I would bank on Bedard ending his career with more points, maybe Leo is more impactful in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting angle that I always forget about. But all you have to do is listen to draft podcasts around the draft, and you get reminded of that every single time. Anyway, yeah, you mentioned Bedard's shot, and it is just absurd. It is actually absurd what he can do with that shot, because he makes the goal, you already spelled it out, but the way he makes the goalies work on these just nothing shots, these nothing plays, these nothing angles, and all of a sudden you have a laser beam going high blocker, high glove, and you just don't expect it. And like as a goalie, that is just so difficult because when you're in net, when that puck starts to get towards the boards or below the dots, like you're kind of not, you're not relaxing, but you're starting to think, okay, like is it going to come back out to the slot? Is it going to come back out to the point? You're already kind of thinking about that. And with Bedard, it's like you just can't ever take your eye off him because he could just rip it at any time. Like he had this one change of angle shot yesterday where like the flex he gets, because he uses a longer stick, and the flex he gets on that long twig, like the puck stays on the toe of the blade the entire time, and all of that flex just goes straight into the puck, and it just explodes out onto the net. And it's just like, I don't understand how he does it. I'm a bit of a nerd about shooting because I would, I try to have a decent shot for a beer leaguer, and I watch the YouTube videos on it all, and I look at him, I'm just like, I don't understand how that works. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say here is that he has that special tool, and I personally am always going to prioritize the guys who have that one elite special thing, because that's the most dangerous aspect of a player's game. That's why when people were arguing about Celebrini versus Bedard this summer, I'm still leading Bedard because Celebrini just can't do that. He will never be able to do that. Now, will he be better in the playoffs, like you said? Possibly. But let's not write off Connor Bedard because he didn't put up 100 points last year or whatever. So where are you at on that, by the way, Celebrini versus Bedard, for our debate of the day?
Yeah, I hate to agree so much, but no, I'm still very much Team Bedard, and I think this year he's kind of I feel like the narrative on the Blackhawks and Sharks, to something else I wanted to get into, has kind of flipped to where the Sharks going into the season were the vibes team. Like everyone just loved everything about the Sharks. Mm-hmm. They're having fun. They're all goofy in the Bay. They're not expecting anything, and Bedard is in the pressure cooker of Chicago, an original six market, and he looks so miserable with all these, players that were signed to bad contracts. And lo and behold, 5 games in, we can't even see Misa on the ice in San Jose. Warsofsky's, never mind.
Will Smith's like taking shots at his coach in the media.
Yeah,
like it's just,
his coach is saying he could give up a kid for a win, and like just the vibes in San Jose seem so bad, and they are so high in Chicago, especially after beating last night's game. And I don't know. I feel like the narratives are switching, but I don't. Yeah. I've never had any issue or any worry that Bedard was gonna or will become a franchise superstar, elite player.
I mean, hey, not to make this about Jake again, but talk about a guy who was high on the Sharks. Jake was wondering if the Sharks would be better than the Ducks this year, and I just that was silly at the time, and it's just getting worse and worse. Now, granted, it's just 5 games or whatever, and the Sharks could go on a little run, and the Hawks could hit a skid, and this could all just flip in a flash. So. And I also do still love Macklin Celebrini. Like,
oh yeah,
don't get me wrong, he's amazing.
I take him on my hockey team. Yeah,
yeah, like he is really awesome. So no issues there. Okay, well we should probably hit people's questions here. I feel like I had something else in the Hawks. Oh yeah, I wanted to say this. I'll shout you out here because I remember, I think it was last year, or it might have been 2 years ago. It was probably last year, but when Sam Renzel first got called up. I remember you said in the Discord like something to the effect of like Sam Renzel is amazing, like this guy looks like, I don't want to misquote you, but you were very high on him. And
yes,
me being me, I was like, like there's no way, like this guy, like blah blah, like just one game, like how, like. But then now like I'm seeing him play this season, and I'm like, oh my god, he's their best defenseman. He's gonna be their best defenseman. Like it's not even close. So credit to you, you were bang on that one.
Yeah, he was drafted in like the 20s too, but
it's insane.
The way he progressed in his 2-way game's great, and he's so smart. Yeah, I'm a big Sam Renzel guy.
Yeah, he went I think 25th or 23rd.
Yeah,
and that's just unbelievable because, I mean, tall, right shot, can move a puck. I mean, maybe that he wasn't
can skate.
Yeah, like his mobility is just so insane. Like these guys usually go top 15. at the lowest. I mean, Sam Renzel, like that kind of player this year in the draft would go top 10. So amazing. Good for the Hawks. He's their best defensive prospect, and it's not close. Anyway, back to the the questions here. So let's start with this from Alex saying, what is both of your concernometers rating 0 through 10, 10 being very concerned on Vatrano and Terry? So 0 to 10, how concerned are you about Vatrano and Terry?
Vatrano, 10 being highest. I'm kind of like at a 7.
Ooh.
A little bit. I didn't have super high expectations, but again, he's a guy who is supposed to be like an instant offense kind of player, and he's kind of been invisible. I was talking to Zach Kavanaugh from the Sporting Tribune. He's like, he sits next to me in the games, and I was like, I don't remember like seeing Vatrano in this game. It was the Carolina game, and I'm just like, he's been kind of invisible for me, which is very un-Frank Vatrano. And
he's
maybe
usually visible in some sense.
At the very least, but maybe he has, it's early as hell, but maybe he has the opposite effect of the Cronin to Quenneville, where Cronin kind of fit his style, and he's just a tenacious forechecker who, maybe has tunnel vision at times, but he can make an impact. So I'm a little more concerned about him. Terry, not at all. Terry,
he's looked good.
Yeah, he's, the production's not there, but I think he's looked pretty good. I always thought he was a good defensive player, so maybe my concerns about his defensive game are a little higher, but as an overall player, not concerned. 3.
He could easily have a couple more goals by now. He's been very involved offensively. I mean, I don't want to say I told all of you so on Frank Vatrano, but I agree with you. He's not as noticeable, but he's not a guy I ever really thought that highly of as a player. And yeah, when he's not scoring goals, this is kind of what he is. Like, he's a checking forward who can give you some energy and some jam here and there, but I haven't looked at the numbers, but it does feel like he's not shooting a ton. And that is kind of a calling card of his game. But so 0 out of 10 for Terry for me, and Vatrano 0 out of 10 as well, because this is just who I think he is. Harrison asks, assuming Zellweger continues his form, what does his extension look like long term and short term? Do you think there's anything Zellweger can do this year to get that big kind of Lacombe contract, or is he just doomed to a bridge deal?
He can do what Lacombe did last year, which is just like elevate his game to a crazy new level. But where he has an assist in 5 games, so I think he's destined to get like a 3-year bridge or 2 or 3 years. But I think Lacombe got a bridge, so it's not the end of the world. But so as far as projections go, not very much, unfortunately, unless he just takes it to an incredibly new high level. But even then, I don't know.
Yeah, I do think that I could see him having a really solid season and maybe accepting a long-term deal with like a lower AAV. Kind of like, I feel like the Hurricanes have done that.
Jackson Blake did it, yeah.
Yeah, I could see him maybe going for that. He doesn't, there's this kind of notion of him as this kind of like good Canadian kid who doesn't, want to take up too much space. And maybe if that's true, then I could see him going for that. Or I could just see him wanting a bridge and kind of letting himself build up his stock even more, so then he can go and get that big contract. Because I think he's capable of it. I think he's capable of being another one of these defensemen who gets an 8x9 or whatever. It's just the opportunity has to be there. So hopefully that answers your question, Harrison. We got this one from Maddie. Do we think Strome's return might just push Vatrano to the 4th line? Seems like it might make the most sense, but I'm not seeing anyone talk about it. Ooh, interesting. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about a guy with $12 million left to be paid out? Well, I guess on the cap sheet, it's deferred. But what do you think happens when Strome comes back, essentially, with Vatrano?
I wouldn't mind it. I don't care so much about what where guys are in the lineup versus how much money they make when the Ducks. I might care about it at some point, but when the Ducks are sitting with like $50 million in cap space, I really don't. But I think, like you said, what Vatrano is bringing right now is kind of what a fourth liner is, right? Energy and forechecking and mixing it up, and and it might balance out the other three lines really well. Like, I think we kind of played around with some stuff texting where, like, I don't know, maybe Strome works really well with Leo Carlsson on the wing with Chris Kreider, and it just might push Vatrano to the fourth line. It on paper makes sense to me as far as stylistically and kind of what we're seeing 5 games in. I think it'd be,
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's funny because I think it was last game or 2 games ago where I saw a message in Discord on Twitter about, like, man, Vatrano's been invisible or whatever. And to be honest, I hadn't even thought about him. Like, he just didn't enter my mind of, like, a guy I should be looking out for. But then it makes sense because, I mean, the guy scored 21 goals last year, 37 goals the year before, 22 goals the year before that. Like, he's been consistently above 20 goals a season as a Duck. I mean, heck, he had 60 points 2 years ago, which feels insane. But I would just caution people that this is just my opinion, but I just don't think that's what he actually is. Like, this is a guy who was in a great situation to put up a lot of points on a really bad team. Did so, to his credit. Like, you can't take those points off the board. He did it. He put those pucks in the net. But on a better team with expectations, he is a guy who's a bit more of a depth player. And that's okay. That's completely fine. That is no shot to him. All the guys in the NHL on good teams who are on third and fourth lines were at some point first and second liners on a team in their past. So it's no shot against him, but it's just, he's not a guy who I would necessarily worry too much about his offense. He's just an energy guy. I think it's more concerning what you said originally, which is, like, I haven't just seen him at all. Like, that's concerning. Yeah. Because you want him engaged for sure.
But having a player like that who has that kind of scoring potential can be an incredible luxury down the road. If this team is a playoff team and you can just, like, throw out Frank Vatrano in a, middle or a bottom 6 role, and just, like, he has shown he can provide that instant offense, so that's a luxury.
Yeah, agreed. And he's gonna score. That's what he does. He's gonna pop off for some goals. Like, it's just his shot is too good for him not to score at some point. And you're right that maybe I'm underselling it a bit too much, where if he's a fourth liner, I mean, that's a damn good fourth liner, because he has that extra offensive element to his game. So he's just a guy to watch, but I would say just expectations should be a little kind of tempered with him. Let's see. We have another one here from Logan asking, which team would you most like to see the Ducks to play in the first round if they were to make it this season? So we're picking matchups here 5 games into the season, but boy. Who is your ideal? I'll just read you the playoff teams right now in the Western Conference. So right now in the Pacific, you have Vegas up top, Vancouver and Seattle in the 2-3, which, as we all expected, and then Chicago, Minnesota in the wild card, and then in the Central you've got Colorado, Winnipeg, and Utah. I mean, some of these don't feel too far off from what they could be, but if you're the Ducks and they get in, I mean, who are you kind of looking for as a favorable matchup?
So I'm just I'm not writing off the, like, Canucks, Kraken, but those aren't the teams. I'm just saying, like, if the Ducks were to make it, they would be a wild card team at best.
Oh, I see.
So they would play, like, the division winners, which are, like, the Colorados, Winnipegs, the usual suspects, Dallas, Vegas, right? And I think while I don't trust Vegas's defense right now, I don't trust them to not go out and get a superstar defender at some point. So I don't want to play Vegas. Colorado, certainly not. Dallas. So I think Winnipeg, I would say, just because
Hellebuck
in the playoffs. Yeah, and I don't love their firepower potential. I love Kyle Connor, and I love Scheifele's great, but I don't think they play such a structured system that I just think they're missing that offensive potency that kind of wins series and cups when it matters the most. So I would say Winnipeg is ironically like the leakiest, I guess, and the one I would prefer.
Yeah, Jake and I had a big disagreement about them on a podcast earlier this year, or in our season previews, where I'm not sure that team is going to be very good this season. I mean, it's still early. Jonathan Toews scored tonight, which is pretty cool, but
Hey,
I mean, yeah, his first goal since 2023, so that's pretty nuts.
that's crazy.
But yeah, Adam Lowry is a huge piece of that Winnipeg Jets team. He's kind of like their life. I mean, he's their heart and soul down the middle, and he underwent hip surgery in the offseason. Like, that's very concerning. And then after Mark Scheifele, it's Jonathan Toews and Vladislav Nemesnikov. Like, I'm not feeling too crazy about that center depth. And then their blue line is just, I mean, it's just whatever. It's really, Dylan Sandberg is hurt. It's just, yeah. So I think you're right. I do think that I'm probably a little low on them, and they do have a chance to turn it around by the playoffs. Ironically, I think, Colorado did lose to Nashville a couple years ago. Was it in the first round?
They lost to Seattle also. Seattle in the first round.
Or was it Seattle or Nashville?
Seattle's one series win was against Colorado.
Oh, I think, was it Nashville maybe Nashville pushed them. I'm forgetting now, but I do think that Colorado does play kind of a volatile style a little bit. And if the Ducks do become this kind of rush, high-speed counterattack team that can also burn you in other ways, that is a team that I could see pulling off an upset against the Avs. So, yeah, we're doing first-round predictions in October. That don't play this tape back come May. But, okay, last one here. We are getting up against it time-wise, but this one from Miguel. How much would David Pastrnak cost? So I'm just going to say this. The Bruins are off to a 3-4 start, so nothing really too noteworthy there. And as far as contract, Pastrnak is, he's still got plenty of contract left. He's a free agent 2031. He has a full no-move clause, 11.2 cap hit. With all that being said, what would it take to get this guy out of Boston?
It would take him wanting to get out of Boston, and with the no move, he'd have to choose Anaheim, which ironically would maybe bring the price down because he's kind of picking his destination, and you only have a certain teams to work with. I like to compare everything to the Jack Eichel deal, which was a 1, a 2, a prospect, and a roster player. But maybe something closer to the Rantanen to Dallas, 2 1s and a good young player.
Because he has that contract already, so that part of it's kind of
correct
settled. Yeah.
So it might be like a combination of. So I think the 2 1s, 2 first-round picks. Maybe you can put protection on the first one. And it would cost maybe a Tristan Luneau or a Zellweger Minchikov. I don't know who would have the most value of those guys. But
well, it's funny because there was just a question earlier that I missed, but who of the defense would have the most value? So there you go. We're answering it.
I don't know. The answer is I don't know because Minchikov has the draft pedigree. Luneau has the AHL and the frame. So maybe Luneau has the most value. Luneau a 1, and someone a prospect.
Yeah.
The Finnish kid that they got this year, Bullius.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, or Herman Traff. Just trade Herman Traff again.
Yeah.
Sell him at peak value.
There you go.
Who's apparently off to a great start in Sweden. Haven't watched a millisecond of him, so I couldn't tell you anything, but it sounds like he's playing well. Okay, well that'll do it. I'm cutting it off here because we're 90 minutes in, which is the hard out. But so thanks everyone for listening and for joining in the chat. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to Patrick again for joining the show. We'll make sure to follow Patrick. Make sure to follow the Hockey News. I'll put all the info in the show notes. So if you want more Ducks coverage, Patrick and the Hockey News you have to be following them. I mean, I was thinking about this. I was talking to someone about this the other day, but like where we were Ducks coverage wise 5 years ago versus where we are now is just insane. Like we couldn't even get lines for practice, and now we get lines, we get quotes, we get everything. So it's a credit to you. It's a credit to everyone who's doing it right now. So yeah, make sure to follow. If you want to support us, lowly Crash the Pond, there's a great way to do that. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/crashthepond. For $2 a month, you get access to the aforementioned Discord server where you get to connect with us. You get to connect with other diehard Ducks fans. Patrick is in the chat too, so you can connect there. You can up that pledge to $7.50 a month. You get access to 2 bonus podcasts in addition to prospect videos. I've got one up right now on Roger McQueen and another on Eric Nielsen, so go check that out. Leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us on Spotify and YouTube, and also check us out on crashthepond.com. People forget that we have a website, but this season, Jake and I have been trying to do some more writing on there. We're trying to tweet less, write more. So if you want, every game pretty much, we have our notes going out and our analytics breakdowns. So do check that out, crashthepond.com. And with all that being said, thank you for listening, everyone, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.
Thank you.